I'm going to call the Middlebrook Elementary School Roof Building Committee meeting to order. It is 5:04 p.m. We will begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Barbara, would you call the roll?
Pat Borgeson,
Present.
Robert Cristiani, Tony Sinto, Joy Cologne.
Here.
Steve Cahill, Vince Salta.
Here.
Mark Hoffman, Chris Bandici,
Here.
and Michael Ward.
Present.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope you had the chance to read the minutes. I would like someone to make a motion to accept the minutes, or a motion to approve the minutes, excuse me.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, so moved. And do we have a second, please?
Second the motion, Mike Ward.
Thank you. Are there any corrections? Can we vote on these by unanimous consent? Okay, the minutes are approved. Okay, the financial report was sent with the documents. I wonder if there are any questions on that. If not, we will enter that into our records along with the other information from this meeting. Okay. Paul Lisi has joined us, and he is going to give us an update on the new project figures, estimates that he submitted and that were sent to all of you.
Thank you, Pat. Yeah, so you all should have received the revised budget for the project, which now totals $2,386,309. And this is based on the bids coming in, the actual bids coming in at more like 2.2, the low bid. Went back and looked at the numbers, looked at what should be increased. Everything went up, a little bit, but the majority of the costs were in the material, in the actual membrane itself, and especially in the insulation, which is the product that is most difficult to get these days. So it's becoming costly, and it's also taking longer and longer to ship. So by the total amount increasing, that obviously changes the contingency, and some of the ineligible amounts go up slightly. There wasn't a lot of ineligible costs, but those go up proportionately, as well as the contingency. So we're just under 2.4 million at this point with the budget, and we feel that that's should be adequate with some contingency, obviously.
Okay. Thank you. Does anyone have questions for Paul? Okay, I would just add a footnote here that Dave Cody and I met with Dan Martin late in March, and we reviewed the actual budget, and according to the state's sharing formula, we actually have enough money in the bonded amount so that we did not have to go to the Board of Finance and ask for an increase at this time. Yes, exactly. So one of the reasons that we're working on submitting this application within this fiscal year is we know what our rate of reimbursement is. And so it's much easier to work with a known quantity. So that's the goal. I did, as requested, update the town council on this project and where we were, and that we were going to solicit a revised cost estimate from Mr. Lisi, and we would be resubmitting through the superintendent and the school department a new application for the project. So that's the update on those two items. Does anyone have any questions for me? Okay, well, now I'd like to ask Dave to talk with us about the proposed resubmission and the date that we're looking at.
Well, we haven't, initially set a date. It'll be sometime next week. I'll work with Mr. Hendrickson to get it in within the first week of May for sure. So I believe that starts on Monday. Well, it actually starts on Sunday, but we'll work next week to get the resubmission in as quickly as possible. I believe we have all the paperwork now with the revised estimate.
Right.
I did speak to Tom Rio up at the Office of School Construction Grant and Review, and he just cautioned that if the resolutions were more than 2 years old, that we would have to submit new ones, more contemporary resolutions, but that's not the case. They're well within the 2-year margin, and I don't see any reason to have delay with the documentation that we're going to submit.
Okay. I just have one question. I know that the resolutions were approved in 2021. Cindy, I don't know if you have those dates, but I went back to my notes and it looks like the capital plan was approved in February 2021. Our building committee was created in March 2021. Our first meeting was in March. Then we went to get more detail on the capital plan resolution. The initial one was amended, and that was done in either late October or very early November of 2021. So, sorry, 2021. So it would seem to me that this project, certainly by the time we start the project, the resolutions will all be still active. Does anybody have any questions about that?
The chair,
Yes.
it's not so much a question about that. And Dave, maybe you can help me with this. What does and I won't hold you to it, but just an estimate of what that time frame now looks like for beginning this project based on the fact that we don't have to go back and ask for additional funds?
Well, I think by the time we get the approval from the state, we could be looking at the June timeline, which would be, pretty much the time we'd like to have the contractor mobilizing so he could start at, by the end of June. I just don't see us being able to do that this academic year. We had discussed previously that we'd be looking to put this back out to bid sometime in the, probably early fall to late fall, so that we can have contractors at least knowledgeable of any potential price increases or hopefully decreases for next calendar year. They should know those numbers by, I'd say, late fall. So I think that'd be the best time to get things back out on the street for bidding.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Pat,
Yes.
Pat, this is Cindy Katsky.
Yes.
So the 2-year period, when is it that the resolutions can't be more than 2 years old when we reapply to the state, or when we do the project or finish the project?
Well, that's a really wonderful question, and I think it should be a point of clarification.
It should be
Dave?
the time of application for the grant.
Okay.
All right.
we will have 2 years from the date that they approve our plans to complete the project.
Okay. Okay, so one of the, that pretty much, unless people have further question, that pretty much sums up and finishes our discussion about the Middlebrook Elementary School roof project. And what I'm going to do in this, and so this is an important thing, we really have to separate the projects in terms of our discussion and in terms of our actions. So I'm going to basically put a break in the meeting if there are no more questions about the Middlebrook School roof project. Okay, so, and also at this time, Paul, I was going to ask you if you wouldn't mind leaving us at this minute, because now we're going to switch our focus to a new project.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for providing that information and helping with this.
Yes, and I'll take a look at the forms that need to be included with the grant application to make sure there aren't any changes required that were impacted by the costs.
Okay, thanks very much.
On that. All right, thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay. Bye, Paul. Okay, so now we're going to turn our attention to the change of the committee purpose and scope. I mentioned before that I went before the town council and I updated them the status of the Middlebrook project. At the same meeting, there was a resolution proposed to create a joint building committee. And that building committee will be the Middlebrook and the Booth Hill Elementary Schools Roof Building Committee. So we will basically be dealing with two projects. Now, I don't know whether each meeting will have information on two projects, but I think it's important that we separate the activity. So for all intents and purposes, now we are talking about the Booth Hill School project. There are two things that I'd like to do. The first is I'd like to ask Dave Cody to share the information about what, sorry, just let me silence this. Okay, I gotta hang up. What stage we're at in terms of Booth Hill.
Well, we're at a very preliminary stage. There has been no work done. There has been a bonding authorization. So I believe there's funding available for design services for this capital year. Dan can correct me if I'm wrong. I think there was $40,000 approved in this latest bond issue. You know, so that's what we've got to work with right now. At least will get us started with preliminary documents so that we can get some estimates to make sure that the capital authorization is sufficient to proceed with the actual construction and design work.
Okay, so one of my questions then is this committee, our first task for this project, then I think you described it as getting somebody up on the roof to get a look and an assessment of the roof. Am I correct on that?
Yes, I think that would be an initial, you know, initial task that we should look to engage an architect for. You know, we can somewhat treat it as almost a feasibility level, which would not be reimbursable anyway. So we could use the existing funds to better define the project for the grant application and, you know, get a sense of where we are financially, especially in light of what we just went through with the Middlebrook roof bidding.
Okay. Well, one of the reasons that I asked that the building committee rules be sent to all of you is because for this initial stage, as you said, a feasibility study, once we have that information, then we can flesh out the scope of the project and we can actually go to the town council, because my understanding is they have to approve the scope of the project according to these rules. Am I correct, Mr. Nugent?
Well, they definitely do.
My question is, at what stage? After the feasibility or after we have selected an architect for the project or recommended an architect for the project?
Yeah, I mean, the building rules don't really specifically identify a feasibility study as something, you know, that they contemplate. But I mean, looking through the rules, I think you're down to like section 9 would be my interpretation. Before requesting an appropriation for the plans and specs, you have to submit drawing, cost estimates, and whatever documents you have to apprise them about the expected scope.
Okay, all right,
So I think we're saying the same thing for just a little different terminology.
okay, fine. So if that's the case, then what is the best way to go about this process? Now, I don't know who wants to speak first. I believe, Dave, you might have an opinion. Kevin, I know you have an opinion. Dan, you might have an opinion as well. But we'd all like to hear what you have to say, that we do this the most efficient way possible.
Well, personally, my feeling is the most expedient way would, since it wouldn't be anything that we would be including in the grant reimbursement process, would be just to save a lot of time and utilize one of the on-call architectural firms that we already have under contract with Mr. Bldg.
Okay. Kevin?
Yeah, so just for feasibility study, we've done this before to get a benchmark or a budget number. You know, I don't know how close it'd be with the cost of things, but we use our on-call architect to go up, give an estimate for you guys to go in front of town council. I would suggest after that, I guess if we're going for reimbursement for the RFQ for the architect, that we can start getting to put together, me and Dave, for the streets, for just obviously Booth Hill. And that would have to be vetted, you know, there would be with the committee, they would have to choose the best qualified architect for that roof. Now, whether, you know, we want to put in, that's gonna be a little more detail I want to get into, but if you want to bring the top 3, interview them, architect, or just go over their scope, when we get an RFQ out there for the architect, you guys would have to suggest who you think would be the best. You know,
Okay, so I remember the last time I wasn't chair of this committee, but I do remember that we received proposals and then we saw presentations and then we had discussion and then we asked for more information. And then ultimately we chose Antonazzi for the Middlebrook project.
correct. That would be the same thing. You would do a qualification, and then when you chose the single person you want, you would ask them for a proposal on what to put the whole Booth Hill together, you know, X amount of dollars.
But to get this first phase started, we would still be working from, I believe it's 5 firms that we have on call.
Yep.
Okay. So how do we make the decision about who to reach out to?
Well, I would caution that we really have only 2 architects out of the 5 that have specific experience with school construction grants, dealing with the Office of School Construction Grant Review. And I think that's very important because I think part of the services we may want from the consultant would be to help in the preparation of an educational specification, which would need to be submitted at the time of the grant.
Right.
Yeah, and just so we're both, me and Dave are on point on this, in agreement on this. So we have the 2 we know, and both of them, we are using them pretty frequently on both sides right now. So it'd probably be more of a schedule thing with them, but I think it's Silver Petrocelli and Antonazzi.
Right.
You know, Silver Petrocelli has significant roof experience as well, especially school roof. And as we know, so has Antonazzi, because I think they've done a very good job on this one to date, except for the, you know, the costs, which are well beyond their control.
Okay.
I mean, I think we could seek proposals from both and we'll take it from there. We can, I can work with Kevin and define a slight scope, and we'll get a proposal from each and make sure that we're looking at apples and apples, not apples and oranges.
Right.
And,
Right.
present it to the
So
committee.
actually, that came up during the Middlebrook roof, what was really covered. So, so Antonazzi was more thorough in their reply. Let me
Yep.
put it that way. Okay. All right. So yes, Dan.
Dan Martin, Assistant Finance Director. I just want to make sure that you folks know that the way the bond authorization reads is the design roof replacement. So I don't matter if it's a matter of semantics or whatnot, it's not for, could be or could not be necessarily for a feasibility study going forward. It's for design roof replacement. I know it's words, but I just want to make sure you guys are aware of that.
Okay, well, I don't really have experience with that. Jim Nugent, do you have any experience to let us know whether this would be a problem?
I guess I'm not really grasping your point here, Dan, in terms of
Well,
getting things started.
The committee was discussing doing like a feasibility study before we went into this. All I'm saying is the funding is authorized for design roof replacement. Nowhere is it saying feasibility study.
You're talking
So
about the bond authorization.
Our funding
Yeah, the
bond
40,000.
authorization talks about design roof replacement for this 40,000.
Yeah,
Not 40,000 for feasibility and 40,000 for the architect, and then whatever it is for the actual construction.
well, this would normally come under the soft cost portion of the roof replacement.
Correct.
Got to be designed.
And this authorization is different than Middlebrook's roof because they authorize the entire project, soup to nuts,
Yes.
including the architect in that one funding authorization, where this one here is the design first, and then as identified in the 5-year approved capital plan, they have funding out in year 23 approved for the earmarked for this in year 23 for this project.
We would need at the next phase, we would need a specifically worded resolution for the 2023 capital project of the roof.
Right, and
Go
then has to be brought forward to make sure it's included in the bond authorization
Right.
after that capital plan's approved.
But maybe we can be clever with our words in terms of creating a motion, because I think we should create a motion that this committee authorizes selecting proposals from the two architects. Dave, your hand is up.
I would just recommend that we consider it a conceptual design. I don't think the authorization is for the entire design. I don't think that was the intent when I had the discussions with the first selectwoman over the bonding request for this year. We talked about getting design underway. Unfortunately, the way the building committee rules are written, you have to have a design to get a design authorized by the
Exactly.
town council. So, this is the initial design that we need to have to get the design authorized by the town council.
Well, sometimes the town council will authorize just an expenditure of town funds to get it rolling before we get to the bond. But I don't know exactly how this was, how it was contemplated for this
Well,
particular.
one of the key resolutions we need for applying for a grant is that we have specific authorization by the town council to have an architect hired for the project. That has to be a regular resolution, and they probably won't give it to us unless we demonstrate more of a need for the roof replacement. And I think probably the best way to accomplish that would be to have a conceptual design that shows the condition and the estimate of cost.
Well, that's what section 9 says, but prior to an appropriation for plans and specs, they want the committee to present various pieces of information to them. But, if we need some seed money from the town council to do this before we start using the bonded funds, I think that's maybe what you're talking about, Dan, then we may just need to ask them for some seed money to get the conceptual design done.
I think we're all talking the same thing. I think this money is really for getting this project started down the road.
This
Design,
$40,000 for this
feasibility, whatever-
fiscal year.
whatever- It's basically whatever we need to do to get this thing going, so we can get the grant resolutions and get the major funding identified.
Okay. So I think we should. Cindy, are you there? Well,
Yes. No,
so I
I'm
think, okay, I think we should have a motion that this committee recommends that we hire an architect for a request proposals for conceptual design for the Booth Hill Elementary School roof project. Does that cover all the bases?
Yes.
Okay, would someone make that motion?
I'll make it as long as I don't have to repeat everything you said.
No, it's awful. Okay, can
I think Barbara got it. So Barbara, I'm making a motion based on what she said.
Okay, can I get a second?
Second the motion, Madam President, Mike Ward.
Thank you. Further discussion on this? Okay, so we are going to, so just remind me of the process, Dave or Kevin. You contact these two firms, the ones with the roof experience, you tell them what you're looking for, you ask them to submit a proposal in writing, and we get to review it, and then we make a decision.
Correct.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, are there any, did we vote on the motion? Okay, then all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed to this motion? Any abstaining? Okay, the motion carries. Okay. Going back to the agenda. I think basically we did review the project scope to the extent that we have it and the process. We don't have a project timeline yet, but I'm not sure we can address that within this meeting. How long, Kevin, I do have a question. How long, Kevin or Dave, would it be before you received information from both firms typically when you've done this before?
Yeah, I would expect 2 to 3 weeks at the most. They know, these are pressing projects for us with the, they'll probably think we're going to try and get it done this summer, but that won't be the case. But, both firms have been highly responsive to me for project proposals that I've been requesting recently.
Okay, all right. Does anyone have more questions about this or, yes, Lynn? Lynn Salter.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Yeah, I'm curious about how this all got initiated and what the report said. In other words, how much have we spent so far on repair at the school?
Dave, can you reply to that via Booth Hill Elementary School?
Well, these are ongoing expenditures that we seem to incur when we have major rain events at the school. Booth Hill's roof was last replaced in 1991. Back before my time here, there was not a consultant, but a roofing manufacturer's rep that was brought in that did do analyses of this roof as well as Middlebrook roof. But then it was decided to go for a state grant reimbursement. So their proposals could not be considered as a competitive bid by the state, but they did do a lot of legwork for us, and they did do roof cuts and analysis of the condition of the roof. I'm not sure if it's sufficient to seek current estimates with contractors now. I think it's better suited by a design firm to prepare a conceptual design to get estimates, simply because we're not basing it on one manufacturer's pricing. So But we have a condition assessment in a sense of that roof. And I can tell you for a fact that every major rain event, we're calling out our on-call roofing contractor to do repairs.
Okay, thank you.
The other thing, I'm going to go back to the minutes from the last meeting to expand on what you said, because we talked a little bit about this during the last meeting. And some of the costs, because we were out with COVID, and then we didn't have as many people in the school, and then people were not in and they were in. So the accurate number in 2019, we spent over $8,000 in repairs. That was in the minutes from the last month. Okay, well, are there any other comments or points of discussion that people would like to bring forward at this time? Okay, well, in that case, I want to say that at our next meeting date, which is May 18th at 7 p.m., we will be in person. We may have letters from these two firms outlining their proposal to do this conceptual design. And we will be able to look at them at that time. So unless there's further business, I would welcome a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Okay,
Second.
thank you. All right. I don't think anyone's objecting. So, all right. Thanks, everybody. And thanks
Thank
for
you, everyone.
accommodating the
night.
difference.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Take care.
I really appreciate it. Okay, bye-bye.